So if I wanted to explore or navigate casual sex, a message that I might get from my dominant culture is that casual sex is something that's fun, but it tends to happen before you meet the right person. My subculture tells me that casual sex is an important part of the culture in which we operate over the lifespan. It's connected to my liberation. It doesn't preclude long-term relationships, and I can meet the right person and still have casual sex, right? So I get a bit of a conflicting message. So I think my dominant culture tells me that a long-term relationship signifies maturity, right? I'm ready for it in a particular way. I'm settling down. That's some of the language that gets used. When people come into counseling and they talk about sexual compulsion or sexual addiction, I always have to take a step back because I want to know, what do they mean by that, right? Not because that's not real or doesn't exist, but often because I think what they're grappling with is their desire to have casual sex, but a message from the dominant culture that says monogamy is not only a signifier of maturity, but that it signifies self-control over your desires. You've gotten to a particular point in your life where you're able to make this choice. And that's a difficult message to grapple with. Because if I transcend that or challenge that, I'm seeing myself as having a disorder. My subculture tells me long-term relationships are hard to find and maybe not essential, right? I can measure my milestones in the world, my progress, my success in other ways. That's the message I get. So my argument here is that we're messaged to from two different systems that we're socialized into. And those systems give us different messages that materialize into scripts that we then internalize, and they create conflicts. I'm going to say that it's nearly impossible to pursue either casual sex or relationships, or long-term relationships, without some personal or external criticism that gives rise to internal conflict, right? And so if I'm pursuing casual sex, right, and something negative or complex comes up for me, shame, for example. I have casual sex, I feel a sense of disgust. Instead of working that out, right, maybe I defer to seeking long-term relationships, right, because that signifies a kind of security and maturity. And so then I defer and I figure it out myself. I'm just going to look for a long-term relationship. And here are all the things that show up when I'm trying to work that out. And if I can't work that out successfully because I don't have the support, I don't have access to resources, people in my community give me conflicting messages, I tend to bounce between these two scripts. And then I fall into a bit of a trap. So the question I want to pose to us is, how do we come up with reconciled scripts? How do we come up with ways of talking about relationships that reflect the models we're interested in? So is it possible to feel great about casual sex and long-term relationships without hierarchizing them? What does sex-positive, affirmative support look like when casual sex brings up difficult feelings, right? So how can I assure that my practitioner, the person I go to, is not going to say, well, if casual sex makes you feel bad, have you considered a long-term relationship? That's not helpful, right? That reiterates a dominant script that I'm already struggling with. That is where my shame originates. That's not helpful.